how could a workshop filled with carpenters, painters, and gardeners possibly tell us a story about a country's multi-billion-dollar innovation strategy? Well, today we're going to connect the dots, from one single meeting room to an entire nation's biggest research challenge. It really does all start right here. We're going to unpack how one seemingly routine decision at just one university shines a bright light on one of the biggest questions facing a global research powerhouse. Okay, so our story begins, but not in some high-tech facility with gleaming steel and particle accelerators. No, we're going somewhere much more, well, hands-on. Welcome to the HuntWorks Laboratoriate, or the Craft Laboratory. And yeah, you're seeing that list right. This isn't about beakers and test tubes. It's about the actual physical tools of our heritage: masonry, painting, carpentry, even gardening. It's this incredible, unique place dedicated to preserving the skills that keep our history alive. So what's the whole point? Well, its core mission is to bring together serious academic research with traditional physical crafts. This is all about making sure that the knowledge of how to care for historic places, that it doesn't get lost. They do that by systematically studying, documenting, and actually developing those very methods. And don't let the word craft fool you into thinking this is some small niche operation. No way. The Craft Lab has a massive reach. We're talking nearly 2 million views on its YouTube channel, major national conventions that bring in hundreds of professionals, and even international conferences. It's a real hub for this entire field. Okay, so with this kind of impact, you'd think the lab's future would be totally secure, right? But how does a unique place like this get the long-term institutional backing it really needs to grow? Well, that question brings us to one specific meeting that changed absolutely everything. So I want you to picture the scene. A university board meeting. You know, budgets, reports, the usual agendas. And on this particular day, the future of the Craft Lab is up for discussion. The question on the table wasn't just about funding, but about its very identity inside the university. And this right here, this is the key line from the meeting's official minutes. The proposal on the table was to formally recognize the Craft Lab as a university-wide research infrastructure. Now I know, that sounds a bit dry, but trust me, that single phrase is a total game changer. So what does that actually mean? Well, this analogy is pretty much perfect. It's about recognizing that the lab's one-of-a-kind facilities, its networks, and its specialized knowledge are a strategic asset. Not just for one department, but for researchers all across the country. It gives them a much stronger position to get long-term funding and collaborate on a national scale. Now, this is where things get really, really interesting, because this one decision about this one lab actually connects to a much bigger story about the entire country's approach to research and innovation. To really get why formalizing a craft lab is such a big deal, we have to zoom out. And that bigger picture comes from this report, the Research Barometer. You can think of it like a national health checkup for research. It asks a pretty simple question. For all the money Sweden pours into R&D, what does it actually get in return? And the very first number that jumps off the page is kind of staggering. In 2023, Sweden invested a massive 3.6% of its entire economic output, its GDP, into R&D. And just to give you a sense of how big that number really is, take a look at this chart. It puts that number in perspective. Sweden's investment isn't just high, it's well above the ambitious target set by the entire European Union, and it just towers over the average for other developed nations. When it comes to pure spending, Sweden is an absolute global powerhouse. So we've established that Sweden is investing a huge amount in research. But this leads to the central, you could even say the billion-dollar question. Are they getting the best possible return on that massive investment? And this is where the story gets really juicy. According to that same research barometer, while Sweden ranks third in the world for R&D spending, it ranks 11th for citation impact. Citation impact is a really key way to measure how influential and important that research is. You know, how often are other scientists citing it and building on it? And clearly, there's a gap. This is the core challenge. Why doesn't that top-tier spending translate into top-tier influence? I mean, with that much money invested, where does the disconnect happen? Well, a big part of the answer lies in where that money actually goes. So here's a major clue. A huge portion of that spending, we're talking nearly 60%, goes into development. That's the D in R&D. It's mostly driven by the business world, and it focuses on turning knowledge we already have into new products. It's not necessarily focused on that fundamental basic research that often leads to those game-changing, highly cited discoveries. And boom, this brings us right back to that university meeting. This national challenge isn't just a problem for the government to solve, it's something that universities have to tackle with practical, on-the-ground strategies. And the decisions made in that meeting are a perfect microcosm of the solution. First, by formalizing the Craft Lab, they're shoring up unique infrastructure that can lead to high-impact, specialized research. Second, by funding critical tools like secure data environments, they're making sure their researchers have what they need to do top-tier work. And third, by adopting new ways to evaluate research, they're changing how they measure success, shifting the focus from just spending money to actually generating impact. Every single step is a direct response to that national challenge. So the ultimate takeaway is this. Boosting a nation's research impact isn't just about writing bigger and bigger checks. It's about making smart, strategic decisions on the ground. It's about recognizing that elevating a unique place like the Craft Lab isn't just some small departmental win. It's a crucial piece of the puzzle in building a stronger, more influential research ecosystem for the whole country. And all this leaves us with the ultimate question. How can a nation best turn that massive investment into world-changing knowledge? The story of the Craft Lab shows us that the answer might not be found just in boardrooms in the capital, but in all the specific, thoughtful decisions made in labs, workshops, and meeting rooms all across the country. It's about the careful work of turning money into meaningful, impactful knowledge.